this is a Jewish professor from Columbia University. And while the mainstream media is making you believe that the Jewish Jewish students are under assault on campuses, we're not saying that anti-Semitism isn't true. We're not saying that some of these Jewish students have gotten involved in anti-Semitic behavior from some knuckleheads or otherwise. But the movement itself, the protests themselves, have nothing to do with anti-Semitism, have nothing to do with intimidating folks. And in fact, many Jews form a part of this movement. Listen to what the professor has to say, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Professor, just your thoughts on it, and maybe just a broader conversation about freedom of speech, freedom from intimidation. We have seen pictures and videos of chants inside the Columbia University campus that many would consider anti-Semitic, racist, and hateful.
Sorry.
Where do you think, Professor? Oh, you all right?
I'm sorry. It was a phone call. I just had to hang up.
Okay, that's all right. Live TV has everything, and I just want your thoughts, if you would, about freedom of expression, freedom from intimidation. Some pictures that we have seen from inside that encampment show signs and some chants that many would consider offensive, intimidating, anti-Semitic. Where do you think, Professor, the line should be between free speech and the freedom to protest and intimidation, lack of respect for others' perspectives, opinions, or even religion?
Yeah, you pose a very, very complicated question. I recognize that it is a complicated question. I think intimidation is a very strong word. And much of what has been called intimidation, the sorts of things that have been called in question as endangering the safety of Jewish students. I mean, I say this as a Jew on campus. It's really been a matter of making people feel uncomfortable rather than intimidating or in any way threatening people. It hasn't really been threatening. I'm sorry, the words are failing me. So yes, it's a genuine question. What I have thought, and I've said a couple of other times before, is that universities have the right, even an obligation, to create speech codes and to sustain speech codes on campus, which are different from what is constitutionally available outside campus in the United States. So, for example, I do not think that genocidal discourse should be permissible on campus because that would genuinely be intimidating for anybody targeted by that discourse. But when I say that, when I feel it, and I do feel it as somebody who has been verbally and physically assaulted by anti-Semites, I just don't think there has been any genocidal talk at this encampment. I realize, all right, the exception would be the one thing that everybody has heard about, the young man who said that Zionists didn't have the right to live. He said this 3 months before the encampment. He apologized for it afterwards. It was not representative of the things that I have heard in the encampment.
And that's something that I've been saying for quite a while now. The mainstream media has been using the exception to paste it onto the rest of the movement. It's the same thing the media does consistently, many a times, with minorities in the way they talk about crime, with minorities in the way they talk about debt. Even as when we had the explosion, the 2008 meltdown, as opposed to blaming the bankers that were heathenish in the way they did things, in the way they cheated, they try to make it look like, oh, look at all these people who took out loans that they couldn't afford. The bankers were complicit. They were forcing loans onto people. They were telling, hey, you can get this, you can do this, you can, Take these easy loans, no interest rate, and then we have it balloons at the end of the look. It's a constancy, and that is what the mainstream media is doing with the movement right this minute. And this professor blows a hole into it, saying, "I am on there and I see what's happening." Just like Mark Thompson spent a whole lot of time on campus, a journalist that is, to point out this wasn't the case. Just like Antonia Hilton, another great journalist from NBC, went out there, spent some actual time, and realized that none of what's been said about these protests have any credulity. Just like what we had Anand Hirada saying, just like what we had Mara Gay talking about. We have to get honest reporting, not corporate driven reporting to manufacture a particular thought in the mindsets of people. Great, Professor. Thank you.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.